Hello friends, welcome back to Get Ready with America. I originally filmed this video 2 weeks ago about my favorite campaign movie that I'm sure you've never heard of, Sydney White. It premiered at the beginning of my sophomore year of college, so I feel a delightful nostalgia for basically everything going on here. This movie includes a lot of my interests: Amanda Bynes, Matt Long, marching bands, mid-aughts fashion, boys singing a cappella, home renovations, and the working class uprising together to overthrow the oligarchical elite. And then literally once I finished filming, I saw that Nick DeRamio, a YouTuber known for his hilarious but scathing critiques of 2000s teen movies, uploaded this. So, of course, I could not upload my love letter to this organizing propaganda masterpiece without addressing a very timely subject: the very thin line between promoting something or someone for very specific reasons that speak to you personally, when overall that thing or person is harmful to other groups of people. If you're not entirely sure what I'm talking about, many people these days refer to this as a form of cancel culture. I'm still excited to dive into the class commentary very much embedded in this modern retelling of Snow White. We're keeping the makeup basic again today because I'm going to the theater this evening and I don't want to redo it. By the way, spoilers ahead for this 14-year-old movie. Let's get into it. Sydney White is a freshman heading to her deceased mother's alma mater, where she intends to rush Kappa Phi Nu as a legacy pledge. The president of Kappa Phi Nu is Rachel Witchburn, who also serves as student council president of Southern Atlantic University. Upon her arrival, Sydney catches the eye of Tyler Prince, popular fraternity president and ex-boyfriend of Rachel, who of course she still moons over, so Sydney is automatically in her crosshairs. Through some pledge-hazing hijinks, Sydney meets and befriends Lenny, a hypochondriac who lives with a bunch of other weirdos in a rundown house known as the Vortex. Ultimately, Rachel does not allow Sydney to join Kappa after Rush, and Sydney ends up with the 7 guys in the Vortex. To get payback and also some desperately needed repairs to the house, she decides to have her new roommates run as a slate for student council to take down Rachel and redistribute resources that have been hoarded by the Greeks for years. Sydney and Tyler begin dating, and he becomes friends with the 7 dorks, much to the ire of Rachel. She hatches a plan that disqualifies the presidential candidate of their slate and gets the Vortex condemned, so they have to move out. After a pep talk from her dad, Sydney is reinvigorated to stick it to the man, decides to run at the head of the slate, and launches their campaign full force. She and the guys take the opportunity to get to know other student groups in an epic montage after my own heart. The night before the big presidential debate, Sydney is finishing up her final term paper for her poli-sci class when Rachel pays a hacker to erase her hard drive. Sydney decides to pull an all-nighter and falls asleep in the morning, almost missing the debate, which would give Rachel an uncontested platform to slide right into victory. While the audience is first filled with fellow Greek members, when Sydney goes up to speak, the venue fills with students from the groups the slate visited to cheer her on. The freedom to the 7th power slate wins the election, and the movie ends with the crew making much-needed repairs to the Vortex. Now, I was expecting Nick's critiques. He had also done What a Girl Wants, and the reason I love Channing Tatum forever, she's the man, so I knew Sydney White was coming and that he would not be kind. For very good reason. I've watched this movie several times over the years, and when I've watched it in the last few years, I've noticed so many glaring flaws found in most mid-aughts teen rom-coms, primarily the lazy and heavy-handed stereotyping that writers lean on for exposition and comedy. This is pretty much what he went after, and I don't disagree with him. In terms of what would stick with a teen audience, this movie is not great. However, when watching with an eye on how accurate the campaigning is, I was truly impressed by how good it is at depicting both the entrenched political machine candidate and insurgent populist outsider. I also can't believe how I never realized how glaring the commentary on class structures is. I tried to do some research on the writing process and the writer, Chad Gomez-Creasy, and couldn't find anything, but I'm convinced he really loved The West Wing, which would have been in its final seasons as he was writing this. There's a scene where the poli-sci professor is talking about the final assignment on modern campaigning and talking about JFK's presidential campaign that reached people who hadn't been inspired to vote before, and it invoked the Obama campaign for me. But this movie came out in 2007, so now I'm thinking maybe the writer of Sydney White, like the writers of The West Wing, was inspired by Obama's 2004 DNC speech and pulled that out in this script. Creasy is now a producer on NCIS New Orleans, so there's very little to my crackpot theory, but I'm going with it. Editing SJ here, and I completely forgot that in my research I saw that Chad Gomez-Creasy did write on Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, another Aaron Sorkin vehicle. So maybe I am not that off. Maybe. Regardless, the script very cleverly integrated the need to be where your constituency is during a campaign with typical college settings. The gym, the tailgate, the frat party, and then making appearances at student groups gatherings. Now, Nick very rightly pointed out the problems with this montage. It leans into stereotypes in order to highlight the juxtaposition between the Greeks and the rest of the campus. Up until this point, there have been 3 Black characters with speaking parts in the movie, and one of them is an African student. Everyone else is white, even though Southern Atlantic University is in Florida, where there are lots of not white people. The montage features a Jewish Student Association meeting that leans into the Orthodox sect, a Pacific Islander Student Association gathering where everyone is dancing to Tiki Torchlight, and a performance by the LGBT SA featuring a trans person? A drag queen? Let me check IMDb. The character is named Danny the Tranny. Yikes. Why did it take me years to realize this is pretty bad? Because I'm not Jewish, AAPI, or LGBTQ, so even though I knew people from all of those communities and knew they probably wouldn't be doing any of the things depicted in the montage at one of their regular meetings, I recognized the coding and went with it. That might seem innocuous since there wasn't necessarily anything harmful depicted in the scenes, but perpetuating stereotypes is what perpetuates a lack of curiosity in diverse cultures. Lots of bigotry stems from ignorance, and stereotypes fuel ignorance. One of the plot points that I don't think I thought about up until I experienced it recently is the way Rachel used her power and resources to punish the people around Sydney so that they wouldn't support her initiative. When Rachel had the vortex condemned, instead of being mad at the university for not fixing their on-campus housing or at Rachel for plotting this, Lenny said he wished they hadn't taken Sydney in and gone along with her student council idea. People are frequently afraid to show support for an opposition candidate because something they need, a job, funding for an organization, housing, is at the mercy of an oppressive authority. While Lenny knew deep down that this wasn't Sydney's fault, and also that this would have come regardless, his immediate need of housing was threatened because of his association with her. I noticed that Tyler didn't seem to even try to caucus his own fraternity that he heads to vote for his girlfriend because he knows no one else will vote against their own self-interest. It's an effective way to keep an opposition party disorganized and unable to take power. That leads well into the actual overarching theme of this movie: eat the rich. To the untrained eye, you might think that the theme of the movie is to be your dorky self because you'll find the people that appreciate you for who you are, but no, it's actually Marxist propaganda. Sydney comes from a working class family, a single dad who's a tradesman, and had to take the Greyhound to move into college, which I always thought was just bizarre, but now realize it's another nod to her socioeconomic status. The thing that stood out to me most this time was at the end of the movie, her hard drive is wiped, and she opts to pull an all-nighter before the big debate in the morning. Sydney is an exceptional student. This is a 201 class she's in her first semester, and the professor has referred to her as one of his best students, so he probably would give her an extension on the paper due to this very valid excuse. But no, Sydney will push ahead because that's what you gotta do in her situation, and you gotta meet the deadline. Yes, I know we needed to hit all of the beats of the Snow White story. She needed an excuse to be asleep, and Tyler comes in, kisses her to wake her up, and whatever. But, it's 2021, and I'm not going to subscribe to pushing ourselves when reasonable accommodations exist. When the crew is kicked out of the vortex, it's Sydney's dad, the plumber, the working class man who inspires his daughter to keep fighting. He said something about tapping into the spirit of her dead mom, but he was actually talking about seizing the means of production. And she did. She banded together with the other non-Greeks and won the election. It's the power of inspiring, connecting, and taking action. This again highlights the blind eye I had for years on this movie. I identify with Sydney. I may or may not have pushed the buttons of authority in college and high school and rallied the people around me to join the fight. I'm a white girl from a middle-class union family who just wanted a really nice hammer to construct theater sets. I wear Chucks with dresses. I'm a dork. This movie was designed for me, but I'm not the only person in this world. And I know there's a difference between media that is for a culture and not everyone, and media that others cultures. And while there's no malicious intent, it still needs to be called out. This is one of my favorite movies for how I identify with it, but I would agree with anyone who said they hated it because it's racist and sexist and transphobic. That's not the pejorative cancel culture. It's rightly calling out something for the harm that it does. Recently, C-SPAN released the 2021 results of its Presidential Historians Survey ranking the US presidents, and Ronald Reagan was in the top 10. Ronald Reagan, who refused to acknowledge the AIDS epidemic and instead heightened animosity toward the LGBTQ community, allowing almost 50,000 people to die during his administration. And yet, historians still rank him number 9 of 45 US presidents, primarily because of his strong scores in public persuasion and agenda setting. Oh, and performance within the context of the times. My point is, your rubric for something doesn't make it infallible when your rubric is highly fallible. My rubric for loving this movie is highly fallible. But if you subscribe to the rubric, maybe you'll love it too. God, I can't wait for Gen Z historians to take this survey one day and yeet Reagan to the bottom of it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 3 needle drops in this movie that live in my soul. I'm the Revolution by the Veronicas playing when she's getting the dorks primed to run for office. Beautiful Soul by Jesse McCartney at the beginning of Tyler and Sydney's first date. And Breakin' Dishes by Rihanna at the beta party. Those, plus the outfits and hair accessories, just hit that mid-aughts spot for me. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this departure from the usual content, and also that you seek out Sydney White if you've never watched it. It's currently not streaming anywhere for free, but it was on Hulu earlier this year, so it could pop up. If you don't want to watch the movie, and even if you do, you should absolutely check out Nick's video, which I've linked in the description box. Please let me know if you want to see any more videos analyzing media's depictions of campaigns. I'm probably going to do them anyway, but it's nice to hear from you. Like this video and subscribe to my channel to learn more about voting across the country. If you're enjoying my videos and want to show big support, please check out my Patreon in the description box. Your small monthly contribution will help me rent campaign movies on YouTube that aren't on any streaming service. I'll see you again soon.